I want to start off with the fact that, look, a lot of people in your party are trying to laugh off Donald Trump, but when he gets those kinds of crowds, you have to take him seriously, don't you?
Well, I'm very worried about where we're headed as a party. I don't think this is the way to get the Latino vote. At the end of the day, this is a defining moment for the Republican Party. There's a lot of frustration with broken borders. I get that. I've been trying to fix the border for 10 years. I would double the Border Patrol, triple the number of drones. All the hijackers who attacked us on 9/11 were visa overstays. So it's more than just the border. You got to control your visa program. But as to Donald Trump, he has said openly, repeatedly, that he believes that most illegal immigrants are drug dealers and rapists, and there may be a few among them that are decent people. After 10 years of working on illegal immigration, I've come to conclude that most illegal immigrants are decent, hardworking people, and some are criminals. This is a defining moment for the Republican Party. We need to reject this. To all the candidates who think that Donald Trump is telling the truth, I think you've lost your way. As to the Republican Party, if we do not reject this way of thinking clearly, without any ambiguity, we'll have lost our way. We'll have lost the moral authority, in my view, to govern this great nation, and I hope we will reject this kind of thinking.
But how do you do that? Look, he talked about the fact that he is awakening a new silent majority. And the fact is that when he talks about building a wall and sending undocumented immigrants back to Mexico, that has a lot of appeal with a lot of people in your party, and you know that.
Well, I can tell you the majority of my party wants to secure the border, control who gets a job. They come here to work. What happened in San Francisco is appalling. It's a good example of why you need to fix the system. But to say that all the 11 million illegal immigrants, for the most part, are rapists and drug dealers is not only offensive at every level, you're telling the Hispanic community who are friends, neighbors, and relatives of the illegal immigrant population exactly what we think of you.
And Senator,
I'm not going to be part of that.
Senator, you said that the Republicans need to reject it. As you know,
Yes.
Your party chairman put in a phone call, a private phone call to Donald Trump asking him to tone down his rhetoric on immigration. Is that enough, or does he need to do more?
Chairman Priebus has done a good job of rebuilding a party that was in tatters. Financially, we were broke. He's rebuilt the infrastructure there. He did a postmortem on the 2012 election explaining to all of us that we've hurt ourselves with Hispanics. I expect that he will do more. At the end of the day, for us to win a national election, we have to do better with Hispanics. And for us to have the moral authority as a party to govern a great nation, we have to reject this demagoguery. If we don't, we will lose, and we will deserve to lose.
But just to be clear, are you saying that the Republican Party chairman should say publicly what he said privately to Donald Trump?
I think it's not only incumbent upon the chairman, but anyone in a responsible position with the Republican Party needs to say the following to the American people. We do not agree with Donald Trump when he says that most illegal immigrants are drug dealers and rapists. We have quite the opposite view, that this is a hard problem, it needs to be solved, but most of these people are decent, hardworking folks coming from poor countries to try to improve their lives, and we need to create order out of chaos. If we can't get this right, Dana, then we're going to keep digging a hole, and it's going to cost us this 2016 election at a time when we could win.
What has he done to the conversation within the Republican nominating process?
I think he's created a defining moment for all candidates. There are some candidates who agree with Donald Trump. They want to make him their vice president. There are some people who love Donald Trump and say that he's speaking the truth. What I think he's doing is being a demagogue. I think he's uninformed about the situation regarding the illegal immigrant population. What happened in San Francisco is appalling, but it does not represent the 11 million. I think he's hijacked the debate. I think he's a wrecking ball for the future of the Republican Party with the Hispanic community, and we need to push back.
What if he says, you know what, you've pushed me too hard if he doesn't get the nomination, and I'm going to go run as a third-party candidate? Aren't you just then handing the keys to the White House to the Democrats?
I've learned a long time ago that I can't control others. I'm not responsible for what he says. I'm responsible for what I believe. My party is responsible for who we are. This is a defining moment in the future of the Republican Party. We can't worry about what Donald Trump might do. We have to focus on what we should do. And as a party, we should reject what he says because it's not true. And if we don't reject it, we've lost the moral authority, in my view, to govern this country.